Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of Rocket's Rambler Garage. We have been working feverishly on this 1962 Rambler Ambassador you see here behind me. And I wouldn't quite say we got it completely torn apart, because we're still going to take it apart some more. But we've definitely got things apart. Over to my right, your left, we've got the engine, which we've got out. In a previous episode, we got it cleaned and scrubbed up to where it's actually looking fairly decent. We also got the car itself out, and we washed up the engine compartment and got the grease and residue off of the driver's side, and we got rid of, thankfully without any buffing at all, we got rid of all of the orange that had kind of coated the entire engine compartment, which was from the former radiator leaking some and spitting rusty water all over everywhere. The radiator right now is up at the radiator shop. We have a nice little radiator shop not too far from here. It is getting re-cored, and it should be back here within a week. We'll have that back in plenty of time because it's not going to go back in for a while. In this episode, we're going to be working on a number of different things. We have the engine, which we're going to get the oil pan off and have a look inside. Based on the valve covers, I'm expecting that it's going to be pretty clean in the bottom of the pan, but it wouldn't be unheard of to find a bunch of goo in the bottom of the oil pan itself. We'll get the other valve cover off and get the gasket off of it and the one that's already off, and get those cleaned up. They need to go through media and get them prepped for paint. We've also got to go through and clean the remains of the Chevy orange off the windage tray in the front of this engine. It is not adhered particularly well, so got to get it off there so we can get some paint to stick to something. Ideally, it'd be lovely to pull that cover off, but it's nicely sealed, and I don't really want to break down and buy another gasket. So we're going to seal up the ports for the intake and go in with a little wire wheel in a die grinder and just basically make dust out of it. But the first thing we're going to do is the exhaust manifolds are back from the sandblaster. To make the engine look a little better, we're going to paint the motor, as I've stated before in an earlier episode, but it also means that the rusty, crusty exhaust manifolds would have looked awful against that fresh new paint. So I sent them in, actually got the water return manifold, the intake manifold, and both exhaust manifolds sandblasted at the local sandblaster. We can do them here, but it's easier to let them run their air compressor rather than me abuse mine for the quite a few hours that it takes for us to go through and do it. We just do a little bit of touch up for the stuff they don't do as good a job as I'd like, and then we're off to putting a coating on. So the first thing I am going to do is focus on getting the coating on the exhaust manifolds. So I'm going to reposition you so you can see that, and I'll be right with you. Okay, so what we're going to be applying is the Eastwood Company's high temp factory cast iron gray. It says it resists heat up to about 1200 degrees, and that's probably true because on an exhaust manifold I've never really burnt this stuff off. I've actually done several manifolds with this now, and it actually works pretty good. Long term, the manifolds will more or less return back to their not so nice looking state, but at least for the short term anyway, they stay looking pretty fresh and clean. So at least for the trip to Kenosha and back, they'll at least be respectable. I've already shaken the can, but I want to kind of check and make sure there's no real sediment in the bottom, which there isn't, so we're pretty much good to go. Okay, so Not a lot of great magic to it. I'm just using a cheap 2-inch brush, and you don't need a whole lot in the brush because it's fairly thin and watery, and so it goes on fairly easy that way. But you don't want a lot in your brush or you'll have it running everywhere. You don't really have to worry about this stuff too much. It'll go on and have brush streaks in it and all kinds of stuff. Once the manifold gets hot, and technically you're supposed to bake these things, although I don't. I just put them on and fire the engine and basically let the engine bake them. But technically you're supposed to put these in an oven and bake them and whatnot. Once you do that with these, it actually takes the brush streaks and things and pretty much smooths them out. You really don't see any of that when you get done cooking them. So, like I said, the stuff's fairly thin. You don't want to wet your brush too much with it or you'll have this stuff everywhere. Looks awful dark. Doesn't really look like cast iron much right now. It lightens up significantly when it dries, unlike a lot of paints and things that darken when they dry. These actually get a little bit lighter. I'm going to let that sit dry enough, then I'll flip it and do the parts I can't actually get. In the meantime, we'll hit this side of this one. Again, you don't have to be real nice, fancy about putting this stuff on. You just want a reasonably easy, even coat. You also want to try to do this fairly quick when you get these back from the sandblaster before the cast iron has a chance to flash rust. You can probably see a little bit of it here. Unfortunately, exhaust manifolds are some of the hardest things to sandblast and have them stay looking rust free. If you take a lot of parts and you sandblast them thoroughly enough, you can actually keep them from flash rusting. Although I know a lot of people say, oh, I always flash rust, and while there's some truth to that, they also don't flash rust too bad if you get a coating on them like this before they rust again. I actually took these over before I started the video and run these through my sandblaster, actually through glass bead, and put a little shot on them. This one's going to be a little fun. I need something that I didn't grab to be able to prop that up so it won't lay back down. I'm going to grab a paint cap and see if it'll hold that up. I'll be right back. Manifolds are actually in really nice shape. Overall, in a previous episode, we surfaced the ends of them to get the new glands to seal up properly, and I did take the time to coat them with a little layer of duct tape to keep the sandblaster from leaving a sandblasted look to the end of the manifold. I really want the natural machined look on those, so I coated them with tape to keep the sandblaster from peppering the freshly machined surface. I have a little spot on this one can't quite get to. I get a smaller brush. All the irregular surfaces make these fun to do. Again, you don't have to worry about brush streaks, any of that sort of stuff. The idea is just to get a wet coating on them and call it good. I'll actually come back and put a second coat on these. Probably come back in after they've had a chance to thoroughly dry and finish them off with a second coat. And a check to make sure that I didn't miss any spots as well. Second coat, when it goes on, will actually brush streak a whole lot worse than this first coat does. But once it gets hot, the heat sort of levels it all back out and you don't really see anything. So I don't usually worry about it too much. I just let the brush streaks happen. Okay. Got one little spot I can't get to with that big honking brush, but I'm going to flip this one over, see what we can do to put a coat on this one. A bit of a run around the masking tape that I stuck my fingers in and coated myself. For people that know their AMC exhaust manifolds, this is on this side, the driver's side manifold, and through 62, because of the steering gearbox sitting in here, they used this kind of S-shaped manifold where the 63 and up, both sides had a manifold kind of like the other one here. They do strangely bolt to the same bolt pattern. The AMC was nice in that regard. They made them universal so you can take an older engine, put the newer manifold on it, and vice versa. Not that there's a huge reason to do so. They also, from my time of surfacing these, it appears that they got the pipe fitting angles just about the same too. So anyway, there is the first coat of exhaust manifold coating complete. We'll let these dry and we'll come back and put a second coat on. Well, good morning. It's actually a couple days after I put the first coat on this. I'm going to start off this morning by putting a second coat on this, and then we're going to move over to prepping the engine for freeze plugs, getting the oil pan off. We got to get the valve covers over and run them through glass bead and get them cleaned up, and see about getting rid of the rest of the Chevy orange off the front of the motor and some parts of the top. But anyway, without further ado, I'm going to put the second coat on these, and then we'll get on to our other stuff. Okay, that takes care of that. So, again, the brush streaks and stuff don't matter. You just got to get a good coating on them. When they get hot, the brush streaks will disappear. And it'll keep these from rusting for a while anyway. They'll eventually re-rust. And you can always pull them off and blast them and coat them so you can love them again. All right. So the original bolts were basically unplated, and they'll actually flash rust pretty fast. So one of the tricks I've discovered, Rust-Oleum high temp barbecue paint actually looks fairly close to the dull black oxide or unplated finish that these have. So we've washed these in solvent. We're gonna put a coat on that. We got more than the sorter there can handle, so we'll put these, when these dry, we'll throw another batch in there and do those, and then we'll be all set. We've got the washers washed in solvent as well to get the machine oils and stuff off of them so their paint will actually stick to them. So put a coat on those without getting in this and spraying my manifolds, would you?
Yeah, extra protection. Whenever you get around to it. They'll get misted, but no, the manifolds will get misted, but
let it be noted that I used up the excess bolts that we had, but bought a package of washers so we don't have to keep buying them a dozen at a time. Love the smell of that stuff.
this isn't that bad.
It's kind of weird smelling by paint standards. Alright, the manifolds are done. Other than I should probably take and tap that hole for the dipstick when it's all said and done. And we got to take the tape off the ends and put the studs in them. We actually need to take them over to the granite plate and put them on the sand discs and move it back and forth a little bit and see if we have fairly good contact or not. They're going back on the same place they come off, so for the most part I don't expect there'll be much trouble.
No,
But
there wasn't any rem flex on it or anything either.
well, no. These were steel to steel originally, and people put gaskets in them, and that's the only time I've seen them leak. If you use a gasket, they're guaranteed to leak. If you put them steel to steel, they won't leak.
Yep.
They'll hold up for decades without leaking.
Well, I think, that stuff dries pretty quick too.
It does. Give it 5-10 minutes, it'll be done. We'll throw those in and throw the washers up there and do them. The washers will have to get flipped because we'll never keep track of which side got coated.
Alright, time to remove this oil pan. As you can see, we didn't clean it, but still got to remove it because there might be a bunch of timing chain teeth in here, and I'm going to do things a little bit on the old-fashioned side, aka speed wrench. Expecting that to happen. That did not go as planned. Oh, there's some sludge in this, but it's not bad. So normally you don't want to happen like what happened here, where I had a straight oil pan going after this camera, but just the way things go, I'll do a little bit of an inspection under there, and I reckon I can show you what the oil pan looks like. I wish my dad closed that door, but he didn't. There's no obvious signs of timing chain teeth in it, but it's got some sludge in it, but I've seen far worse. At least that sludge is actually kind of sludgy rather than a rock. Car we took to Kenosha last time was a rock, which is not much fun. I had a lot of time in front of a solvent tank cleaning it. Another thing y'all want to watch out for too is in these oil pump pickups, don't worry, I have stuff under to catch it. These oil pump pickups will collect a lot of timing chain teeth. When your timing chain inevitably jumps, because they used nylon coated cam gears, it will all end up in here. So you need to run up there with some solvent and clean it all out and pray it all comes back out. So yeah, we'll do that. We'll check. I'm not even sure if these 62s had nylon coated cam gears, but they might have, and if they did, well, it's hopefully didn't jump by the time that this one got replaced. So I figured we'd show you just how impeccable this dang engine actually looks in here. Normally some of these, this whole wall in here, rather than being that red oxide's just black, which you still can see. It's this little bit of black right in here, but that's part of what it has. Oh, I found that chunk of paint we saw in the pickup, Dad. Yeah, and if you look too, right here's a good spot. Not sure how well it shows up on camera, but those cam lobes look gorgeous, and the back sides of the pistons and all that look pretty good too. There's no burnt oil up on them really, or nothing. Well, there's a little bit, but not bad. There's nothing in the pickup for the oil pump either, which is good. So this motor's pretty darn clean. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna clean up this gasket surface and all that, and do the same thing on the oil pan, and then we'll get back to you guys later. Okay, so here I'm gonna cut 4 gaskets, one to go to each of these little block off plates, and then one for the then 2 for the water return manifold. And you don't need a whole lot for it. This is just an old piece of countertop basically with a Formica surface on it. A nice sharp X-Acto knife blade, little sharpening stone, socket for the right hole diameter. So basically just the imaginary hole that would be in the water return manifold, and a pencil so you can outline everything and mark it down. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take my outline, set that down. Yes, I know my hands are dirty and oily and all that. I don't care. So there you go. There's one outline, and then eventually at the end I'll make the hole for this, but first I just want to get the main outline done and then get that all dealt with. So I'll start cutting. Just don't cut yourself, and generally it's a good rule too to sharpen your X-Acto knife before you do this. It's better to go slow and take a while than it is to go quick and botch it. Because if you go quick and you botch it, you'll be spending all that amount of time figuring out how to cut a new one. Before people say it, yes, I know there's laser cutters and all that you can scan a gasket and stuff and send that through and it'll laser cut you out a whole new one. That would be lovely, but those are like $1,500 for the one I actually need. So I just cut it out by hand because an X-Acto knife set is relatively cheap. And for those who are wondering what these big cutouts for, that's water pump gaskets for one of these. This is just some 20 thou thick paper. Nothing special, just in a sheet. And you just want to keep basically going in a circle till you get it all done. And if you run off the line a little bit, it won't hurt it none. Just don't go like obscenely far off. So there you go, we got it all cut out. Then next thing I gotta do is I'll punch these 2 holes out with a hammer and a little punch on a piece of plastic on the anvil. If you just punch straight through this onto the anvil, you'll shatter the end of that punch. So I don't know the normal piece of plastic we use, but this isn't our normal one. And yes, I know there's a mountain of stuff in the way, but I'm pretty used to it. I've dealt with it for ages. So you just want to take it and one good whack with a hammer and be done with it. And it'll leave a little mark in the plastic, but that's alright. They normally do. Just like that, we have 1 down, 1 more to go, and then 2 with big holes in the middle. Okay, so now that I have these all cut out, I have... Nobody saw that. Just one of my gaskets and oh, god dang it, you broke in the back. Oh well. And print, I don't have to recut that one. And then I just have a standard 3/8 course bolt, stack of washers on it to space it out far enough that I can actually get a tiny bit of tension on it. You don't have to do a whole lot, and I'm sure there's people who are going to suggest better, faster ways of doing this than my current method, which is 2 bolts with a stack of washers. Get those semi-snug. And I just come over here with a razor blade. Once again, don't slice yourself. This here is just more to get a rough idea of where the hole is, since I ain't got a whole lot of better method of doing this. So this is the current find out method. I said it doesn't have to be that great. I'm gonna actually make it nice and purty in a minute. Yeah, it don't look that good, but I can fix that in a minute. So I'm gonna do here, this is just an old 90s Craftsman 13/16 socket. It's mostly covering up the hole. It's plenty good. And come on, you. Figure out where you're gonna be and then stay there. Don't have the blade shifting on me. So all I did is I just cut out around it. And I have a decent little perimeter, and all I simply do from there is just continue cutting out that perimeter and until I get a fairly decently round circle ish. Also helps too if I don't have this giant tuft of crap here that I don't want, but oh, I'm gonna have to work with it. My own method. Or the other option you have here too is you just simply don't do that. Simply just trace it out with a pencil. I wonder how my replacement on the baseball team is doing. That's what everyone is saying. Not good, which is fine. That team wasn't worth a darn anyways. And there you have it. One fully finished gasket, and I'll show you how well this fits. So here's the gasket I just cut. And there you have it. That's how she fits. Yeah, there's some tufts of stuff, but oh well, it's fine. And with that, I think I am calling it quits for the day. My dad already hit the hay earlier, so I think it's my turn now. It's about probably after 8 o'clock. Alright, so I will see you guys once again in the morning.
Well, good evening. We didn't do a whole lot of videoing today. That's why you're hearing good evening instead of good morning. We sort of skipped right over. We had quite a marathon day today, going through and just plain scrubbing, and scrubbing some more. And of course cleaning out bolt holes and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, we will kind of get you in close here and we'll show you some of the detail of that scrubbing. Okay, so we got the valve covers off and you can see there's like spotless up in here, but we were able to get around and clean the rails up here. Got in and we cleaned all the various spark plug holes out down in the block or cylinder head here. Tapped all those bolt holes out with a tap. Got those cleaned out. Got all the core plug holes cleaned out. Run a tap through the drain plug hole. Got the oil pan off. Got that scrubbed inside and out. All the old gasket removed from both halves. We'll still have to go and strip the paint off of it, but there's not much left to strip. Got bolt holes tapped up here in the front of the head. Got everything clean. We're pretty much eliminated of all the Chevy orange we had. Got in and got the crankshaft pulley all cleaned up. We've worked a little bit on the missing studs here, but we pretty much ruined those, so we're going to have to buy a couple of new studs. Unfortunately, the last ones I bought were long, so we're going to have to shorten the new ones up to fit properly. Did the same thing over here on the right side cylinder head. Got everything cleaned up there. Same thing here, core plug holes all cleaned out. We did get the last remaining core plug that was still sitting down in the water jacket out. So that's cool. I got the back of the motor all cleaned up as well. It was actually in pretty good shape. Clean wise, we got all the bolt holes back here tapped out. We got these plates media blasted that block off the water return ports when the heads are swapped ends. So we got gaskets for those. We got the plates cleaned. Over here on the solvent, we got both valve covers have been out and they're media blasted and been washed. They'll need a final wipe down in solvent again, but they're pretty much ready to paint. Some behind the scenes, there's a lot of parts sitting over here that have also been degreased. You can see the gaskets and stuff here that Benjamin made. We got these, we run them through our vapor blaster and cleaned the wing nuts up, made them look like new. Did the same thing yesterday with the engine identification tag, otherwise known as a date build code tag. So lots of stuff clean and ready to go. Got dust covers ready. That's going to have to go through paint. We also happen to have the water return manifold done here. The intake is actually done and been cleaned as well. It's pretty close to being ready for paint, other than it's flash rusted a little bit, so we're gonna have to do a little bit of touch up on it, but we'll save that until we're actually ready to paint. We also got the generator mounting bracket that goes in here and the belt tensioner. All that stuff's all been through glass bead and ready to go. So that's where we're at. This is actually pretty close to just being left alone for a while. The next thing we actually need to do is work on getting the differential and transmission out, and the remaining two cross members out, because they need to go through so that they come out looking like this one down here, which has been out and been degreased, but it was all about probably a good ½ inch of goo on most of that. It took probably 3 hours of degreasing to get that thing clean as it is. We're debating exactly what we're going to do with the end. We might just take and clean that up and shoot a little bit of paint on the end of it. Not going to try to get in and do a big heavy duty repainting of all this support stuff down here. So that's kind of where we're at the moment. We got, like I said, everything pretty well cleaned up. Chevy orange is gone, thankfully. It was not adhered particularly well anyway. So we're pretty close to ready to paint. So with that, we'll sign off for the evening. And as always, we appreciate you watching. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to us. It really helps out the channel. It gives us feedback on...
Now repeat that whole thing. So you're looking at the camera.
I don't want to be looking at the camera.
Okay, well, do it rather than staring at a motor, because...
Why? It's perfect. Oh, and he always does it this way.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying, join them.
Okay. As always, thank you for watching. If you are not a subscriber, please consider subscribing. It really helps out the channel. And with that, I'll sign off. We'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching.